Hey there, this is This Week in Pharmacy. I am your host, Todd Urey. I am excited. This is a big show today. We have so much to share with you. There's some big news that just popped at 1:06 p.m. Okay. And it's big news. So that is coming up. But I want to tell you about today's show and let you know what's going on. We had a disaster here in the studio for all of you content developers. If you ever are used to you podcasters out there, my fellow pharmacy podcasters, or any podcaster for that matter, if you ever transfer to a live environment, it is a completely different experience. And we actually had an entire soundboard shutdown, and we didn't think we were going to have a microphone for today. So, just to share that in life, there will be bumps, and you just try to get through to it as best as you can. Pharmacists know what that's like. Just in case you don't know, I am just blown away by pharmacists stepping up all across the world. And that's prefaced to one of our special guests that is the founder of the Pharmacist Diaries. And we'll be bringing her on. Do some Googling maybe between now and then. But we do have to talk about some important news first. And then we're also going to be having Dr. Arvizu come on. I can't wait for you to share what's going on in her life and really helping to, what are we talking about? Always transforming this profession. This profession is in an accelerated speed. It's accelerating with innovation and changing the role of the pharmacist. Our payer models are changing. But let's talk about news. I have some big news to share. This will be probably the first podcast you hear with this news on it. But guess what? There is trouble in retail pharmacy land. And we have Rite Aid filing for bankruptcy, which they just dropped this news, like I said, today at about 1 o'clock. And this opens up a massive amount of opportunity for our community pharmacy owners, our independent pharmacy owners, to step up and find out where these locations are going to be open. I know that there's big, obviously, giants in chain pharmacy that will probably react to this, but if you can, and if you know Rite Aid's in your market, maybe you already knew that this was happening, but officially announced, and that concerns me. It concerns me because of our state of the nation in healthcare and how there are pharmacy deserts. Sometimes the only healthcare entity that's in a area here in the country, in the United States, is a local retail pharmacy or Rite Aid in this instance. And there could be a lot of people impacted. And like I said, that is a chance for us to keep changing things and keep refining things. So shout out to our community pharmacists and our community pharmacy owners. I think it's interesting how we're seeing changes not only in technology, but in how pharmacists are stepping up and driving education. We have the ability now to present different ways of learning, thinking, processes in what you do as a pharmacist from a clinical perspective. And I think part of that is the education that is being driven from passionate pharmacists in the spaces of new medicine and what would be considered integrative medicine. And one of that is cannabis. So we want to announce that Cannabis Pharmacy, they are a provider of different podcasting content. They brought on Dr. Lombardo, Jeff Lombardo, who is a professor up at Butler University School of Pharmacy. Well, they're bringing on Dr. Stephen, is his last name, Cutler. Dr. Cutler is the dean of the School of South Carolina School of Pharmacy, University of South Carolina School of Pharmacy. They're bringing together Joe Friedman from the state of Illinois, who is a huge resource to the state of Illinois on the usage of cannabis in medicine and ancillary treatments around pain, around anxiety, around sleep, around appetite, and around cancer treatments and how they're going to be using cannabis. So, guess what? Cannabis Pharmacy is helping to invest in this consortium. They're going to be calling it Cannabis Pharmacy University. You can learn more about them at cannabispharmacy.com. But we want to start finding the experts in different conditions. The topicals that are coming from this. My wife and I use a roll-on that is a CBD roll-on that they're researching additional more. But I'll tell you, it's one of the most effective things in just general back pain, and I feel like it's not a substance that's going to be addictive, or the some of what we've gone through with the opioid use disorder and in the epidemic. You always have to think about where do people need pharmacists most, and that's a personal question. But guess what? The answer in my book is it's really everywhere. Anywhere there's a patient, there needs to be a pharmacist, and pharmacists understand that better than anyone. I also want to mention that the Ohio Capital Journal, who brought us an article TWIRx last week about the serious problems in understaffing for pharmacies, and this, of course, was an article about CVS specifically. There is major public health concerns being brought up by local legislators, local governments, the mayor of several cities in Ohio that said that there is serious risk to the public. And I want everyone to realize where this stems from, and that is, how are we getting things paid for? And are we putting the emphasis on an old age of pharmacy and healthcare? And now we're moving into a different age of being more precise, precision driven, and clinical driven, and being able to drive down into diabetes or hypertension, or something that is more controllable by the oversight of pharmacists and physician teams. So we are in a new dawn, a new day here in the United States for pharmacy. And I want to just say thank you to pharmacists before we get into the rest of the show. I also want to say thank you to our sponsor today for supporting the show, NasoCleanse.
Ever wonder why we wash our hands, brush our teeth, but ignore the idea of cleaning our nose? Do you know that 80% of all respiratory illness starts in the nose? And do you suffer from allergies, a dry nose, or sinus issues? Maybe you use a CPAP or travel frequently. If so, you need the newest and best product in nasal healthcare and well-being. NasoCleanse is a comfortable and convenient way to clean and moisturize your nose at home or on the go. The unique cleansing wand is like a gentle toothbrush for the nose, and with the specially formulated antiseptic gel, NasoCleanse offers triple action relief of nasal symptoms: gentle cleansing, reducing germs, and soothing moisturizing action. NasoCleanse, for a fresh, clean, healthy nose. Listeners receive 20% off on all products. Go to nasocleanse.com, that's NasoCleanse.com, and enter promo code PPN4NASO. NasoCleanse is also available on Amazon.
I met these people. I met the NasoCleanse team at the NACDS 2023 Total Store Expo, which was in San Diego. I was very proud, and I want to give a shout out to thank you to the NACDS for allowing us to be part of the gathering of leaders in our national chain and micro chain pharmacies. NasoCleanse helped us get there, so I want to give a shout out to Gail and Joy and the team. They are going to provide us with additional educational information and collaborations with other pharmacists who deal with respiratory sicknesses, rare disease states, different things that are happening that pharmacists understand. Even some of the physicians that we've been talking with, Fellows on Call. If you don't know this podcast, please look it up. Fellows on Call. You can Google that. It's an amazing podcast with two wonderful physicians that really get into complex disease conditions, and they make it fun to listen to. And we are doing some collaboration with them. And I think we will reach out to them about future collaborations, and maybe even working with Nasal Cleanse to give us some of the data that they have in keeping our nasal passages clean. I tried it. It's very kind of weird to do it the first. There's a video out there. I'm not going to tell you where it's at. That me trying the product out, and that was embarrassing. But I have to say it wasn't as unpleasant as I thought it was going to be. Number one, number two, my whole nostril and air passages opened up even more than what I was getting. Of course, we don't really notice it when you're not fully being able to breathe through your nose, but I was breathing great for the rest of the day. So guess what? When I can prove something that quick, I become a fan of that. And speaking of fans, I am a fan of our next guest, and I have been for over about a year and a half. I met this amazing, passionate pharmacist through Instagram, the power of social media. There's so much positivity in social media, and there's so much negativity in social media. And I'm a half glass full kind of person. And I believe in outreach and a little bit of a stalker when a pharmacist comes up and who amazes me at some of their work, especially in content. Anisha Patel, I want to welcome you to This Week in Pharmacy.
My goodness, it feels good to be on the show. Thank you for having me. I know it's like we have to do the little dance. I'm really excited to be here. I'm very excited by everything that's going on with your live production. I'm loving it. Yeah, as a podcaster and a video podcaster, like I'm loving it. Yeah, nice work.
It's scared. Imagine you getting ready to go live as we were, and then your system when you opened up the board, because I was opening up the board just like I always do, and it's like, oh, updating, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I'm looking at the time, and it's like we're 5 minutes away, and then we're 3 minutes away, and then it's like, oh my goodness. So Anisha, I'm here. I want to just give a shout out to you and your amazing husband. He's even good looking, so that's even better. We got to have him on TWIRx at someday to talk about creative content. But your background, your professionalism, the polish of your show. Please tell our listeners about who is Anisha Patel and talk to us about Pharmacist Diaries.
Thank you. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction and for stalking me for the last year and a half. You're right. The power of social media is amazing and can be so good and positive in so many ways. So yeah, so anyone who's listening or kind of watching, my name is Anisha Patel. I am a pharmacist. I've been qualified for around 13 years now. I'm currently working as a specialist pediatric pharmacist here in London. I'm across the ocean. And I work with palliative care patients mainly. And I am also a lecturer at a university in the UK teaching pharmacy students, both kind of undergraduate students who are preparing to be pharmacists, as well as those who have been qualified for a few years and are now becoming prescribers in the world of pharmacy here in the UK, which is very exciting. Yeah, so I created the Pharmacist Diaries podcast around 3 years ago. It's what I call a little passion project of mine on the side of working and full-time, yeah, pharmacy roles, full-time parenting. I've got now 2 young children, lots of commuting back and forth on trains to work, but we've made it happen. I started my journey with an audio podcast and now fully fledged on the video, which I'm absolutely excited and proud of. But I'm very fortunate to live with a videographer. So I have a lot of support. I mean, big shout out to Sanjay, because I wouldn't be here without him for sure. I guess the reason why I created the podcast was I was teaching pharmacy students and first year students in particular. And here in the UK, we go straight from high school into pharmacy. So you don't have the kind of 2, 3, 4 years of undergraduate life prior to entering into that professional kind of degree. So you find that students are 17, 18 years old going into what feels like a very professional, career journey from the start of student life. And when you meet students, they are still very green in terms of their understanding of the world, life, work, and they don't necessarily understand exactly what pharmacists do, in terms of career options, where they can work, what kind of skills that you really need to have. Um, and when I started teaching them and identifying this information, I realized quite quickly that there was quite a massive gap in the market for educating students about pharmacy careers and showcasing our profession and truly, I guess, capturing the stories behind pharmacists' lives. And here in the UK, we're really fortunate. We have such a big variety of roles that we are able to do, whether that's hospital, community pharmacy, retail industry, education. It's very similar to the US, but I think we focus a lot on retail, hospital, and industry for undergraduate students, and now there are so many more opportunities that we don't necessarily, raise awareness of, in the degree, and also, now so many pharmacists are taking on non-traditional roles and becoming entrepreneurs and setting up their own consulting businesses that I think that we have to highlight the skills and the opportunities that are available so students can make the right choices from early on. And I'm a massive advocate for helping young people to identify what they love, what they're good at, what they're passionate about at a younger age. So then when they identify those, I guess, foundational elements of choosing a career pathway, they can then link it to the skills they have during their university degree and then identify the basically the perfect job for them. And part of the podcast is providing that inspiration, that education, that motivation, and showcasing how you can also transition from one pathway or one sector of pharmacy to another. What I didn't realize when I started the podcast is I was aiming to speak to students and kind of be in their headphones on their way to university because in London it's so expensive. Um, our students live usually with their parents or like with friends outside of the city and kind of travel in. So I knew there was an opportunity that they would be listening to Spotify and music and other podcasts that maybe I could convince them to educate themselves in the pharmacy space. So, yeah, started my platform, and within a few months, um, even within the first year, there was over 100 countries tuning into the podcast and over 10,000 downloads at that time. And I was just like, it was mind blowing that that many people all over the globe were listening to me. And looking at my statistics, it wasn't actually students that were listening to me, it was qualified pharmacists with so many years of experience. And I had people reaching out to me telling me, "Oh, I've made a career change," or "You've inspired me to do something different," or "Oh, I can see how my skills within community pharmacy can now be transferred to a hospital job, and I'm actually gonna apply for one."
Yep.
And that made me, you know, you'd feel so happy and you feel that reward from doing something that isn't even really part of your job. It was something I was just doing for fun. And during the pandemic, it was just beautiful for me to connect with other pharmacists through these wonderful open conversations that never felt like an interview. It was like having coffee with a friend. And it was just so lovely to see what people were doing and what they were achieving and showcasing that journey of theirs on my platform. And I love the kind of creativity and the innovation and everything digital that comes with
Mhm.
running a podcast, and it's grown significantly since then. Um, I've had now over 101 episodes of the podcast, which I'm very, very proud of and very excited about, and I
Congratulations.
said 2023 is my year, right, Todd? So, lots of exciting things are kind of coming out the pipeline this year.
Well, I wanna make a point that you said, and that is the UK is going through transformation of the role of the pharmacist, the purpose, the insertion, the expansion per se of the pharmacist and where they are. Isn't it interesting that this is happening in Australia? This is happening in Germany. This is happening in South America. It's definitely happening in the United States. And it's all bubbling up even more so than ever. And I think that organizations like the FIP, the Federation of International Pharmacists, plays really a key role of bringing together a lot of those players. They're having their annual event in Brisbane, and I can't remember. Is it in February?
No, it's in September of this year, 24th, I think it is. It's a 4-day weekend, I think it is.
So shout out to Katrina, who is doing an Excel podcast with us. Katrina Azur is joining the Pharmacy Podcast Network. She will be covering the Brisbane event and will be able to report back to us a little bit on that. But Anisha, isn't that amazing that our countries are going through that same transformation? And this is why I am so thrilled with your audience that you already have, that we're going to be able to expand your audience and expand those discussions and get people in other countries starting to gravitate in towards you so that they can share what's going on, because that's what this network is about. It is not about podcasting. A shout out to Gil Bash, who's one of my mentors at Finn Partners, our public relations arm to healthcare, is just amazing. And he says, this is not about podcasting, as much as I love it. And I do love it. But he's absolutely right. This is about what pharmacists are doing for people's health and people's wellness. And a shout out to Dr. Scott Chelson, who's branding wellness in pharmacists out of his relationship with Baptist University and some of the sports centers down there, and his dedication. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing and how this is extra work for you. For the first 10 years of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, I was doing it alongside of my real job, like my wife calls it, your real job. And I had to make money and I had to do both. And guess what? You had to do the same. You are cheating. I just want to give everybody context that you have this powerhouse producer, videographer. He does graphics, he does transitions, he does creative video. So big cheating move there with his powering your podcast.
I know, and it's I never imagined that my husband and I would ever work together, and it is a wonderful thing. I mean, we have our disagreements from time to time. Who doesn't? But we figure out a way to work it out and both be happy in terms of the workspace. But we love it. We genuinely love working on this podcast together. And
the two of you together is one of the best episodes, because I see you really you're both very transparent, and I felt like your audience was a fly on the wall, and you two were really having an honest conversation, and it wasn't, and the mics disappeared where it was just the two of you talking. And I thought that was really that was a fun episode.
Yeah, I love our joint episodes, and we don't really plan them out. We wing it. And we just enjoy a conversation as if, we're having coffee and people are just, little flies on the wall. So it's wonderful to kind of share that and have that reflective journey with each other. So it's very exciting. And like you said, from an international perspective, it is so wonderful that we can all share what we're all doing in different countries and supporting each other to grow, identifying gaps within different sectors of the pharmacy, like practice, learning from each other in terms of maybe multidisciplinary working or ward rounds in a hospital. We have pharmacists now working in primary care, so we have them in general practice, similar to doctors running clinics in different specialties, which is a really huge kind of transition for us in the UK. But I think it's amazing to be in that space right now. And I'm well aware that Australia have also been starting their journey from that perspective on the West Coast and transitioning to the East Coast, doing a pilot in the same sector of pharmacy. And it just gives young people so many more options in terms of what they want to do and how they want to work. Also, these primary care roles are more like a 9 to 5, where you're not doing shifts in a hospital and nights and on-calls. I'm 13 years in and I'm doing an on-call shift tonight. Still going.
That that keeps the pencil sharpened, that.
I know, right? And I'm on call in two ways, one with a baby and the second one is the phone. But it's all good. It's all part and parcel of the process of being a hospital pharmacist. And I'm just genuinely enjoying the journey. I'm really enjoying. I'm not saying I don't know what I'm doing, but at the same time, sometimes it feels in the world of an entrepreneur that it's trial and error, right? You give something a go. If it works, amazing. If it doesn't, you figure out why and what else you can do to make it better for the people who are listening to you.
Yes.
And I do absolutely adore that about being a podcaster in pharmacy. Um, Joining your network and kind of expanding my own audience within the US is a massive win for me to make a connection with someone who's in the same space as I am, to share our journeys together and to make a friend in the podcast world. I'm winning. Yeah.
Yes, well, we're winning. We're winning. You coming on board. The style of your podcast is going to be wonderful to intermix other people into your publication and what you're doing. I'm so proud that you and I have got to share some of our own um, obstacles in developing content, as well as our ability to start helping organizations build better communications by the talent and the art of podcasting as a means of good communication, whether that's your video, like you were saying, adding on to it, or just audio, which is really the traditional podcast. And that's still where we are getting over 80% of our entire audience is all through the pure audio play versus all of the video, like TWIRx. When we launched TWIRx just this year, it was all about, hey, let's put a video segment in, strip the audio, and give somebody an updated information on what's happening in our profession and why right now is the best time in the history of pharmacy to be a pharmacist, as long as you're ready to tilt your way of thinking about what pharmacists are really supposed to be doing in the first place, which is interesting because that's what they did in the 1800s and the early 1900s. Is they were the chemist, they were the compounder, they were the sometimes the first responder of situations. And then all of a sudden we got into the formation of the pharmaceutical industry, and it started taking away some of that true compounding and being a pharmacist from really digging in. And guess what? Now we're going on the other edge, because now we have digital therapeutics, remote patient monitoring, all this data, artificial intelligence. It's time to reinvent, and it's not even time. It's already happening. This reinvention and transformation of where the pharmacist fits and how the pharmacist is that advocate to the patient and the voice of the patient. It's sometimes it's the pharmacist that is the only advocate for the patient, based on not being able to get something paid for, or as a follow-up to the physician, or stepping out and saying, hey, this is not, this prescription or this medication isn't working, and be an advocate for the patient. So it's fun to hear you say that you are keeping your toe in maybe in this way, your leg, in actually the trenches and being a pharmacist, because that is, you get to dial in to what's really important.
Absolutely. And that's the only way to keep up to date. But for anyone listening out there, it is hard work to try and keep up with both. And there will be a point where I may need to cut down from my real job, let's call it, and move into, more of the life of an entrepreneur as a mother and a wife. It fits very well with my lifestyle to be my own boss. I actually love being my own boss. I love that I get to make my own choices and I don't need to ask anyone for permission.
You're a boss, and you're no.
Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah, I'm with you on that. But I also wanted to go back to your point about being the voice for the patient, and I'm very proud that I guess I've chosen this pathway of podcasting in the world of pharmacy careers, because there is so much change happening, and it is so exciting from the point of view of a podcaster, specifically within the pharmacy career avenue, that there is so much going on in the world of pharmacy. And I follow a lot of people in the US, and there is some seriously exciting stuff happening in comparison to the UK, or maybe Americans are much better at showcasing what they do in the pharmacy profession than we are. We're a little bit more reserved maybe in the UK in comparison. But hey, my voice will change that, and this podcast will help people to showcase who they are and what they're achieving in the pharmacy world. I saw the advert for the discount code for pharmacycannabis.com, right? That's a new avenue for pharmacists, which is really exciting, as well as the world of digital pharmacy. I mean, there's so many jobs in IT. I've always wondered how many pharmacists Epic have within their network, because it's such a huge organization.
Sure.
And even here in the UK, like, a lot of pharmacists are transitioning into that kind of life of a digital pharmacist, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like that, again, if you don't want to be patient facing, there are so many options for you within pharmacy. And I just hope that I continue to support people to follow their passions and chase their dreams.
Well, I am so proud that you are part of this network, and the value that you're going to bring to our network, and the flair and everything. And you and I will make it a goal to find a place to go and spend time together at like a national or international event where we can show up and bring a lot of other people together. Maybe it could be the first international pharmacist podcasters event where we descend on an area and all talk together. But I think it's
my goodness, don't. That sounds so exciting.
do it. There is an event called Farm at Sea that's going to be a cruise next July. Farm at the @ symbol and then SEA. So Farm at Sea. And it's a cruise for pharmacists. And it's really interesting to see other people that are pharmacy or pharmacist related in our industry stepping up and really taking control of the profession and doing things that are meaningful and mission based, and finally bringing joy back to the profession in the pharmacists that are very frustrated right now. There are a lot of listeners to us who might say, we're deaf tone to what they go through. And we're not. When I was at the NACDS, we talked to several organizations that are doing nothing but helping the transition of people's careers, as well as relieving burnout based on the intensity of our pharmacists in those chain environments. I'm not sure the way it is in the UK, Anisha. Maybe you can share that with our listeners, but it's pretty intense to be a community retail pharmacist. As you saw the announcement today that Rite Aid is going bankrupt. There's a lot of pharmacists out there who don't want to be in retail pharmacy anymore because of the focus on numbers of prescriptions instead of in volume, instead of really like managing this whole thing better to get the pharmacist doing more clinical and consultation with the individual patients. And that's for the entrepreneurs out there to think about, to continue to refine what is pharmacy care, and how many of our people out there who need you. They need you, Anisha. They need all of those pharmacists out there to step up and be their medication management and pharmacological experts and advocate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a similar situation here in the UK in terms of community pharmacy or retail pharmacy. Maybe not to the extent of burnout that people are facing in the US, but there's definitely an issue. It is a numbers game, especially if you work for the big chain pharmacies. I feel that independent pharmacies are more, I guess, they advocate for the patient a little bit more from the perspective of being in the heart of the community, and the pharmacy owner truly wants to build that community within the pharmacy. And I feel like those pharmacists are probably a little bit happier in retail. But if you do work for a big chain, it does sometimes feel like a numbers game. You're constantly chasing, like you said, the number of prescriptions that you're doing weekly or monthly, as well as additional services that we provide with medication reviews, etc.,
Yep.
within the pharmacy, or flu vaccinations. But again, it's very much focused on the numbers. So pharmacists do tend to get quite frustrated in the roles because they don't have any control over how they want to treat their patients, or even have time to, spend with their patients, getting to know them or counseling them on medications, because you are glued to checking all the time, or dealing with queries or problem solving. So it's tough to get the balance, but let's hope we can make it work.
So you have to promise me that you're going to come back on This Week in Pharmacy and give us some ongoing updates. I want to dig into your profession and your specific issues in the UK, because I'd like to use the connections that you have as a way of updating not just This Week in Pharmacy United States. We need to talk about being This Week in Pharmacy in the UK or in Ireland. We have some connections in Ireland through Fin Partners that we're going to be bringing in. We now have connections in New Zealand. We're going to go after Robert Czar out of an amazing pharmacist in Australia. A shout out to Robert Czar and what he's doing there in technology. But promise that you'll come back. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network. We're so excited that you're here, and I cannot wait to our next time that we get to do this together.
Absolutely. I'm all in, Todd, and thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you soon. See you, Anisha. All right. I want to give a shout out to Order Insight. This is a organization that we met up with at the NACDS, and it was amazing to talk with them. I just want to play a message from Order Insight, and I want to tell you something about this organization.
As a pharmacy professional, balancing the demands of inventory management with your organization's business goals can feel almost impossible. Enter Order Insight, an expert system for U.S. pharmacies that delivers predictability in an ever-changing world. Spend time where it counts, control what matters, optimize intelligently, and collaborate with confidence with a partner that prioritizes your pharmacy's interests, not your suppliers. Join the growing community of 9,000 plus trusted pharmacies using Order Insight today. Visit getorderinsight.com for more information. That's getorderinsight.com.
All right. I've got to meet this organization. We have them on the post show, the NACDS Total Store Expo post show. Please look that up. This group operates mostly in health system pharmacy, but they're also helping out micro chain, independently owned community pharmacies as well. Once again, I want you to check them out for Order Insight, getorderinsight.com, all about inventory management and the analytics and some of the amazing ways to balance inventory, as well as better buying and buying decisions. All right, I am excited. There's a story that comes from my next guest, and she's very special to me because she was one of my most trusted early on in really reforming the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Dr. Ann Arvizu and I met down in Miami. She invited me down there. I was down there for some other work. Remember, when back in the day, I had to be doing both. I had to do my real job and I had to do Pharmacy Podcast Network. So I was down at a meeting in Miami, very close by Hollywood, Florida, to talk about opioid use disorder in the emergency rooms and being able to get people to treatment and using some of the protocols between emergency and our pharmacist input. And Ann and I met, and she sat me down, and I told her the whole business model, and it was weird, but within 15 minutes of meeting her, we literally connected. She's become a friend of mine. I have her actually in my phone. I can text her and rely on her, but I want to welcome to This Week in Pharmacy for the first time. This is overdue, Dr. Ann Arvizu.
Oh, thank you, Todd. This is so great. And you are so very special to me. We are, yep, on speed dial on our text together. I know that I can yell at you. You can yell back. It's good. We have that friendship going. And I have seen you do such amazing things with the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Can I say as a friend that I'm super proud of you? My gosh, that intro, like Anisha said, that intro was stellar. I'm just sitting there behind the scenes going, oh my gosh, look how far we've all come on the Pharmacist Network. And I'm just so excited to be here today. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here because you have given me not only direction, you have given me opportunity to do other things with you that are extremely meaningful. And one of those things is you honored me and you offered me a seat on your advisory board of the Endometriosis Foundation. And I want you right out of the gate to tell us a little bit about your background and why the merging of someone who understands pharma and the whole insides of the pharmaceutical manufacturer, how someone who became sick themselves turns around and uses that to build an association that's going to have impact and meaning, as well as finding out and learning through your hardships of what it was to build the Core Life method.
Wow. Okay. So let's start with the Endometrial Cancer Foundation and where that came from, because you laid a whole bunch of stuff down. So let me pick it up and try and put it, in a string of events. So I spent 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry. You had mentioned the pharmaceutical industry earlier. It was not the way, like these Rite Aid pharmacists. We're going to get to them at the end of this discussion because this goes right to the Core Life method. That is just very timely discussion for today. So, wow, that's a big ball that just dropped for a lot of pharmacists.
Yeah.
So 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry, 17 of those years, it was not just I worked there as a pharmacist. I was a global leader. So I started off as a document specialist. I went to scientist. I went to science manager. I went to global clinical trial manager. I went to associate director, senior director, with directors under me all over the globe. So I held a remit in Latin America with 136 countries. I had Latin America and 36 countries in Latin America. Then I took on Asia Pacific. Then I took a global role, and I had leaders in 4 regions around the globe, and that was huge. So at that point, I had built a 111 person team, and you learned so much in business. And around maybe, I started the Core Life Coach Institute sort of in a parallel to my life in pharma. I realized that life in pharma was just like life in retail or life in hospital pharmacy. It was a just burnout clock ticking, waiting to happen. And running around the globe and working long hours, really, that was just something that happened in leadership. And it was expected. And as a woman in leadership, you're this nurturing mother that takes care of the teams under you and upholds the C-suite above you. And then I started my own company. So I became the entrepreneur when I got married. And you and I have had this discussion, but just for the listeners who haven't heard the Corepreneur podcast, for me, entrepreneurship is a calling. So you better be ready for it, right? The 3 companies I've started, including the Endometrial Cancer Foundation, all were really downloads, some bigger than others, but they were an idea that came in that I could not shake. And for me, that was like, God, all right, is that what okay, let me do this. And I jump in with all kinds of, both feet, fast forward. It's the only way I know to do things. So I've stumbled and hit the ground with some of these businesses. But I've built them, and I built a 7-figure business with Core Life Group, and a division of Core Life Group is the Core Life Coach Institute. And so the Core Life method is the cornerstone of that. And so 2 years ago, when I was diagnosed with endometrial cancer, as an oncology specialist, as a top medical information person, right, I knew exactly what to look up so that I could go into my doctor and talk to them and co-create the plan forward for my treatment and my care. And most people don't have that luxury. In fact, most women out there, I would get on the Facebook groups and, endometrial cancer women, we call ourselves peaches to each other because of the peach ribbon. And for me, as a pharmacist, as an advocate for myself, I knew that these women didn't have an advocate. So I started the Endometrial Cancer Foundation last year and invited you to that board for them, first and foremost. And that is a business in and of itself. Bringing them what the essence of the core life method is a coaching transformational methodology. And I'll talk more about that when I relaunch the Corpreneur podcast. By the way, I'll drop a date. Corpreneur podcast is coming back out September 21st. So you'll have the RSS feed on that day. And on September 22nd, we always did the Thursday, Friday thing together. Yeah. It'll be back on the Pharmacy Podcast Network. So that's another little announcement we're dropping today. So excited about it. And then for these women with endometrial cancer, September right around the corner. Can you believe it? Can you believe we're even here at this part of the year? Like the year just flies by. So as an advocate for women's health and to put my pharmacist back, my pharmacist hat back on, or pharmacist
hat.
Yeah. My pharmacy back on. Put my pharmacist coat back on, if you will. I haven't had it on for 25 years, but to really come out and give people what I believe in as non-pharmacological intervention. Of course, guide them to the right therapies and the right places to go, but non-pharmacological intervention is just as important as a pharmacist to teach our patients as pharmacological intervention. So I'm sure you've heard this probably from other pharmacists, but the basis of our word, pharmacist, is pharmakon with a K. And that means poisoner. So as a pharmacist, I'm doling out something, and it's my job to keep back from whatever that's why they check what a pharmacist or what a physician is sending, prescribing to a patient, because what that amount might be for that particular patient might not be correct. So years while I was in pharmacy practice, I was also a geriatric specialist. And as a geriatrician, you look at the fact that a dehydrated person, right, they're going to need less drug. And so you have people on chemo, and then they're looking online for what herb might help me or what supplement could be good for cancer, because their doctors aren't talking about that because they're poo-pooing things. So putting that together, Anisha said, she bridged the gap where she saw a massive gap. And I was so happy to hear her say those words, because there are massive gaps in pharmacy practice, in the pharmaceutical industry, and in medicine. Mm-hmm. So how do you get from medicine to miracle? How do you get from healthcare to healing? How do you get from faith to facts, or vice versa, the facts of the faith? How do you get from the inspiration? How do you get inspiration out of information? These gaps are what the Core Life method helps to bridge. And so bringing that to that community is very important. I've already gathered about 90 women. And I think, in the very beginning of the year, I had the foundation was hacked. Like all of our finances were systematically attacked. I had to completely renovate. So, you start a national 501c3 and you get jurisdiction in 2 states, California and Florida. And then you're like, wow, let's see, I'm a thief. Let me go on and cyber attack a foundation for women's cancer. So, but all things work together for good. I truly believe that. And so it's made me be able to create better security, not only just in the foundation, but in my business this year. Unwanted work, of course, and that kind of leads you to the Core Life method. There's no good time for crisis. Mm-hmm. And that's just what's happened at Rite Aid. We have a whole bunch of pharmacists that lost their job. Mm-hmm. So what are they going to do next?
Yeah. Scramble.
So they're going to scramble, or they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to try, and if they're here, if somebody's here and they're listening from Rite Aid and they just potentially lost their job, I'm going to give you some advice. Number 1, wait till you get a package. And number 2, start listening to the Corepreneur podcast.
Hmm.
And you can go back and screen those last 15 episodes. There was 35,000 downloads. And therefore, that means there are so many pharmacists hungry for the entrepreneur conversation.
Mhm.
And I love that, because when you're in the middle of chaos, overwhelm, resistance, and exhaustion, that's the core. If you heard the acronym in Corepreneur and in the Core Life Method, what you really need to do is get centered, open, resilient, and energized. And the Core Life Method is the coaching methodology that gets you there. So this is the wheel. If you have my book, Affluent Minds, you might have seen that before. It's also in my textbook when I teach this. And we've redone our e-learning platform this year. So Core Life U is coming back out. And Core Life Coach Institute is a 16-week coach training program that takes you through this model. But if you don't have time for that, let me just kind of share a little bit about it now. So when you have a hit in your career right there, or your finances, which losing a job will kind of get, if you could go back up to the wheel for a second. Let me walk people through that if they're watching. So you got the career and your finances just hit. That's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect, oh my gosh, I have to go home to my wife and tell her I lost my job, or vice versa, right? The wife to the husband, maybe, or partner, or whatever. If you're serving, you're not going to want to serve and give as much, because you're going to have to conserve for yourself. It affects your health because it's going to drive up your stress level. You're going into fight or flight rather than, oh my gosh, take a deep breath right now. That's not just woo, that's science. A deep breath will stimulate the vagus nerve and activate the relaxation response to the parasympathetic nervous system, right? And get you back into some clarity, so that if you look at that inner circle right there around all of your life areas, that's it. Crisis, time wasters, time stealers, interruptions in your life. They are constantly bombarding us 24/7, 365. And the only place to truly balance our life and truly beat burnout is right inside our very, very powerful core. That's where you get centered, open, resilient, and energized. And Todd, you and I have talked about this before. This came to me in a time when I was most burned out, and it was 2009. It was 2008. We had a massive economic breakdown in the country, and Florida was hit really hard. California, Las Vegas, all markets were really hit. We went into a recession, and in that manner, it's a lot like the way it's been since 2000, since the pandemic. There's just 2008 was like a big spike. This is more like a slow drip down, and people are still trying to figure out their new normal.
Yep.
And so you see things like this happening all the time. You see a Rite Aid saying it's time for bankruptcy. I mean, how many companies have gone down? Not during the pandemic, but in the past couple of years. Amazon was laying off during Christmas time last year. So we have these needs that people are not knowing where to go when they're in crisis. And so I'm going to open my arms right now and say, come here, Rite Aid pharmacist. come to the entrepreneur side. And really, that maybe it's the most timely thing that I'm relaunching this right now, because I never really thought, hey, I should probably take this to burned out pharmacists in retail, because really we're looking at make the break from corporate to freedom, but in a very intelligent manner. So that's what I help people do all the time. Usually people who are smart at what they do. There's so much potential as the pharmacist, like what you were saying earlier. Yeah. And the sky's the limit if you want to create something new. So, but you got to get out of that stress level first to think clearly.
Yep. Yes. I want to tap into some of your thoughts for that career transition planning. And let's take the example, and it's a live example. It's a real life for some of our Rite Aid pharmacists who have been part of their communities for years. They certainly don't want to move. They now their lives are disrupted. What is the steps that they take to say, hey, should I be a long-term care pharmacist, a specialty pharmacist? Sometimes we make decisions based on wanting to get that next job as quickly as possible to feel secure. And sometimes it's time to slow down first. And like you said, take a breath and really kind of build evaluation. So this is really good that you said this because it ties into this course too, but give kind of like a first step, second step kind of
Yeah.
example.
I think I have a process called the 5R process, and one of them is really, one of them is recalibrating, which we kind of showed you a little bit about the wheel, but it's reestablishing and reevaluating yourself, right? So reevaluation of every area of your life right now. Am I happy? What do I want to do? Just a couple basic questions, right? There's an acronym in coaching and in high-level leadership called HALT. And it means if you're hungry, you're angry, you're lonely, or you're tired, don't do anything. So right now they're going to be spinning their wheels for a bit, right? When a company goes bankrupt, sometimes they give you the pink slip overnight. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. Right now, this is so hot off the press. We don't know what we're dealing with. But if they do, that's like the immediate sympathetic nervous system. Take the deep breaths, halt. So that would be my advice if that's the case. If it's that they're going to be the slow descent, right? It gives you, there's two things that happen there. There's a total demotivation of going into work. Like if they say you have 3 months left, not one of those pharmacists are really going to have it in them. They're going to be scrambling, either looking for another job or envisioning a new future. Maybe some of them, like my brother's a pharmacist in Rite Aid. I'm going to actually have to reach out and see, he's in his, he's been there, done that in his career. He might be a perfect opportunity for a retirement package at this point. So if you're of a certain age, that retirement packages, those are happening earlier and earlier for men and women pharmacists these days. So over 55, you might want to think about that. If there's a package opportunity to leave, and they're trying to cut their costs, that might be a great thing for you to do. If you want to just take that immediate leap, and I'd say become a business coach like me and invest in yourself to really say, okay, what can I do to, in a very controlled environment, have you make me take a deep breath, Anne, right? And say, okay, what envisioning can I do? Because you can't just jump into another career, because pharmacists come to me all the time that are VPs, that are, really high level leaders, either in the industry or out. A lot of people come to me from academia and they've said, I want to jump in the pharmaceutical industry. And I always laugh. I did a video about that a couple of years ago. I'm like, okay, but I always try and guide people out of the pharmaceutical industry. So you can't just jump into a new career without that skill set unless you're willing to sort of humble yourself and walk in with a humble attitude and say, yeah, you know what? I was a VP here. I was a director here. I'm willing to kind of, just get my foot in the door and change a career path. But for me, the fourth step is entrepreneurship.
Well, I'm thrilled that you've made the announcement about Corepreneur. The Corepreneur podcast was one of my favorites. September 21st, you're dropping your new season and new episodes start up. We're excited that you'll be broadcasting that through Pharmacy Podcast Network, as well as some of our new initiatives to start blending podcast opportunities with others that are thought leaders and panel sessions. I think we're going to start picking people's different minds about different subjects to bring people like you together with other organizers, especially if they have the opportunity to tap into some of our national associations. So a shout out to Dr. Michael Hogue, who is the CEO of the APHA, and he took time to give me a very special interview at the NACDS meeting. I didn't think he'd have time because you can imagine how busy one association leader is with another when you're there. But it was a treat for me to have Steve Anderson, the CEO of the NACDS, and Michael Hogue, Dr. Hogue, the CEO of APHA, on the same show. I was blown away, and it's honored to be a part of this change in advancement and transformation of our industry and our profession, which is why I'm excited about the corepreneur taking the pause that it did, which to tell you the truth, I was disappointed because I wanted to help get it going. I wanted to help get it out there. Look at what's happened now. It was a timing thing, and you're so attuned to listening and reaching out to God and taking time to listen to do the right timing. And it was interesting that it stalled when it did, and how now it's coming out and it's ready to go. So I'm excited.
Thank you, Todd. This was awesome. And I didn't know Anisha was still here. So if you saw me on the video looking down, it's because I'm texting with her. So, talk about like how you are such an amazing connector. Like there's a connection happening while we're live right now. And I love that. And I love being part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. This is amazing. We have something else to talk about, and that's Peach Pit Jam with Dr. Ann. That's another conversation. I'm just going to throw that out there, but that's happening live September 1st.
Excellent. We'll have to have you back, come back on TWIRx, be here, bring us information and news or anything that you feel is relevant, because you're one of our thought leaders. You're one of the Pharmacy 50, hashtag Pharmacy 50, and was awarded by votes of being recognized as one of the 50 most influential pharmacists in our country. So very proud of you and everything that you've accomplished. So I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Todd, always.
See you later. All right. Listen, pharmacists, pharmacy professionals, technicians, let's work together. There are things that we may not be doing, we may not be addressing, we may not be connecting, and it's you. That's the reason this network is so powerful. And now it's an international pharmacist-driven network. This is your platform. This is not my platform. You use the Pharmacy Podcast Network to advance our profession. If you are ready, if you are innovative, you reach out to us and tell us, what can we do to serve this profession better? And that always comes from internal. It comes from our pharmacy technicians. Stand by. We're going to be working with Michael Johnston. He is the founder of the NPTA, the National Pharmacy Technician Association, coming on the network. What do you know? Exciting about that. It's people like Mike. It's people like Anisha. It's people like Anne. It's all of the people that come together. We are changing the pharmacy profession. We're taking control of the pharmacy profession. The PBMs are breaking apart. The way that they did business is going to be crumbling. It's going to transform. It's going to change everything. Be a part of this. Reach out to Pharmacy Podcast. Listen to us on all podcast platforms, whichever one's your favorite. We will be there. We will always be there for you. Reach out to me. My email is Yuri. That's my last name, Yuri@pharmacypodcast.com. If there's anything I can ever do for you, I would like to try. Not necessarily going to be able to do it. But thank you for listening to This Week in Pharmacy, and we're out.